Hi there. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Kevin Egan. I'm Vice President of North America Sales here at Slack, and you are joining our Frontier session called Spark Your Sales Team Potential, Insight from Sales Leaders. I am joined by two great sales leaders today, Yamini Rangan from Chief Customer Officer at HubSpot and Mark Wayland, Chief CRO at Box. I know personally that you're going to enjoy today's conversation and their insights. I've had the chance to work with both Yamini and Mark in past lives, and can tell you they're some of the strongest sales leaders that I've ever worked with. They're also Slack advocates, and you'll hopefully be learning some things around not only working through this changing environment, but how Slack is supporting that. Sales leadership working through changing environments is nothing new. We've all had to alter our go-to-market strategies and so forth. And what we're really going to try to get at in today's session is hearing from Yamini and Mark in terms of how do you better take care of your employees? How do you better take care of your customers? How do we stay aligned? And what does the tooling look like to help achieve all that? So without further ado, I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself, Yamini.
Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for having me. It is fantastic to be here at Slack Frontiers. My name is Yamini Rangan. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at HubSpot. And what does that role mean? It actually is bringing together marketing, sales, customer success, and all of the operations teams that are customer facing so that we can align and deliver delightful customer experiences at scale. So that's what I'm focused on, is our customers and making sure that we are delighting our customers through all kinds of transitions. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thanks again for joining us. And Mark.
Hi, Kevin. Great to see you, and thanks for having us today. I'm Mark Wayland. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Box. We are a cloud computing company that focuses on cloud content management. So, along with Slack, sort of creating this next generation set of tools for modern workers. So our platform specifically allows customers to communicate and collaborate and share securely, internally and externally, all the content that they use on a daily basis. Been with the company for a little over a year. And in prior lives, you and I worked together at Salesforce, and I was at Gartner before that. And great to be here with you and all these Slack customers today.
Great. Thanks again, Mark. As we mentioned, sales leaders are not afraid of change. We are used to kind of constant change, but boy, what a year this has been. Working in a remote environment, taking care of our employees and our customers and keeping aligned has been incredible. So, Yamini, I'd love to hear from you first. What are you seeing in terms of taking care of your employees?
Yeah, definitely 2020 has been a year of adversity and change. And I joined HubSpot at the beginning of this year. And for those of you who don't know HubSpot, we are a CRM platform for small and medium businesses. We deliver solutions that are marketing, sales, customer success, and CMS related. Now, 2020 has been, a lot of change for our employees. And we start with our employees because we got to recognize that it's not just about employees working from home. I think employees are dealing with a pandemic and trying to get work done from home. And that's a very, very different perspective to take. The way we have really approached that to keep the morale high, first of all, start with where they are. When the pandemic started in March and April, it was a lot about uncertainty in terms of their jobs, uncertainty in terms of their lives, uncertainty in terms of their quotas, their day-to-day. And so we started there, and we spent a lot of time making sure that we provided as much clarity as possible. That meant that we typically have monthly AMAs with the management team, which is like Ask Me Anything. We shifted that to weekly AMAs. So we were communicating constantly. We were spending hours every week in front of our employees to make sure that they were certain. The second part of it was really to support them through all of the changes. Everybody started working from home, and some of them were parents. And so we provided a number of different ways in which to support our teams, including jazz classes, health classes, classes to help parents, provide some kind of levity in the day for their children and so on. And so I think that was the second part. And then the third is inspiring. I think you really do need to, especially running a sales organization, you got to think about how do you continue to inspire? And we changed a number of different things from, the huddle being around the office to the virtual huddle, to virtual coffee breaks, to having daily stand-ups in the morning and the evening, all virtually, so that we can still maintain that proximity as a team, and we could inspire ourselves as well as the team. And so a lot of different changes. I won't say that everything has gone well, but we've certainly been there every single day for our employees so that they can continue to, contribute and be productive.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make is the idea that it felt like in the first few weeks of this, we were kind of running on adrenaline, but the idea of maintaining that motivation, that engagement is just critical.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. Hey, Mark, what are you seeing at Box?
A lot of similar things to what Yamini shared. At the start of the pandemic, we got together as a leadership team to talk about what would really be our North Star through this thing. And as we're a technology that really helps with remote work, we sort of suspected that we would get a little bit of a bump from it, but that really became sort of the third priority for us. The real number one priority was the health and mental wellness of our Boxers, our fellow employees. And then secondly was how can we help our customers through this pandemic? We have, really kind of two cohorts of customers in a way, a number that are years and years into their cloud journey. And they've made these investments over the last 3 to 5 years, and they've fared fairly well as they've shifted all their employees home. But then we had a whole lot of other customers and prospects that either had a small departmental deployment of Box or were just evaluating Box and other cloud technologies for the first time. And how could we really make it easy for them to get online with us and quickly? And then in terms of, the health and wellness of the employees, to echo Yamini's comments, it's really around culture and inspiration and transparency. And so the company's 15 years old, and we have an all-company lunch every Friday, and those immediately flipped to virtual, and they went heavy on AMAs and less on PowerPoint slides and updates on what's going on in the business, just to make sure that our employees around the world felt like they had a voice to understand what's going on. And then we also put a number of programs in place in terms of stipends for work-at-home technologies, support for parents and whatnot. We really have, because we sell from small business to large enterprise in the sales organization, we have people that are with us in their first job out of university and maybe living in a studio apartment in New York City, which is a very challenging environment. If you're an extrovert in a studio in New York City, you move to New York to be out and about and to be social. And that's a very isolating feeling, being stuck in that studio for months on end. And much of those people moved home with their parents. And on the other end, we have parents that have maybe young kids, 2 working parents with 5 to 10-year-old kids that are home doing school over video. So significant challenges. And we had to exhibit a lot of flexibility and a lot of support for our people, and no matter what stage of their careers they're in.
Right. Yeah. The spectrum of kind of circumstances that we see as leaders has been pretty incredible. And to kind of be empathetic and provide support to each and every one of those scenarios is important.
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear, Mark. And so that's a little bit on how we're taking care of our employees, and it's very insightful there. How about customers? What are you seeing in terms of remote work is changing the dynamic of customer engagement? What is your team seeing there?
Yeah, well, for us, customers usually buy Box departmentally, and then as they become increasingly successful, we move out to more and more departments. But unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, they didn't just send home a department; they sent the whole company. So we had to very quickly sort of respond to a lot of that demand and come up with new and flexible pricing offerings so that organizations that did not have budget to roll us out wall to wall could do so with ease. So we definitely saw a lot of that. And then just to reiterate my earlier comment, when we talked to CIOs that are multiple years into their cloud journey, they actually had quite an easy time sending everyone home. And then there were others that did not have quite such an easy time. But what I'm hearing from CIOs these days is that I think that narrative in the first couple of months that we were going to move into this new normal, that we'd get out of the pandemic and then we would go back to our offices, but in this new normal way where we wouldn't stay with our old working habits. Well, that's just not happening. The new normal is, day after never, it appears on some days. And we're now in this not normal phase where we're still at home and we're going to be here for a while. And that's just required us to be increasingly flexible, both with the way we engage with our customers and the way we engage with our partners and our employees. What I am finding with customers in the selling environment is that they're more available than ever before. So in the old world, when maybe you had a few more signers to go on a deal and a few days left in the quarter or in the month, you may be tremendously at risk. But these days, everyone's available, everyone's in touch, even if they are, staying in an Airbnb and getting some semblance of vacation, and they're still on Wi-Fi, they still have access to Slack and to Box and all the other tools that they use to get information, and certainly DocuSign to sign deals. So we've had a huge increase in executive engagement. and somewhat of a decrease in deal pushes and slips because of the availability of signers.
Interesting. So the less travel and more time in their home office is making them more accessible. That's great. So I'm guessing you've been able to do some pretty interesting things from a contract standpoint and compressing timeframes and getting opportunities over the finish line in short order.
Yeah, certainly, and not without headwinds. I mean, obviously, we have a lot of customers that are in directly impacted industries, so it's not we're not just answering the phone and saying how many and what color.
Yeah.
But definitely, since we do help with remote work and with the availability of the ability to get to customers with more regularity than before, it's actually been somewhat of a smooth transition on that front.
It's great to hear. Yamini, HubSpot has a huge customer base. And you do some really interesting programs and getting to the voice of the customer. How have you stayed aligned during this time?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that Mark, has said resonates deeply with us as well. I think at HubSpot, we start with one first principle, which is solve for the customer. Mm-hmm. So again, when March and April happened, I think we started with how can we stick through with our customers during the worst of their time so that they can choose to be with us in the years to come. So that's how we approached it. And in March and April, we put a number of customer plays really quickly. We had daily stand-up meetings with the management team. We shipped some decisions in the first 2 weeks to help our customers, things like payment flexibility, things like really looking at what they were using and helping them, provide discounts. We created a customer relief fund for a lot of our customers. We moved a number of paid features into the free tiers so that our customers could stay engaged with their customers during this process. That's what we were, seeing from a lot of our customers, and then also made changes to pricing overall. And all of those changes we shipped in 2 weeks. It had immediate impact. It had a pretty quick recovery process for some of our customers. And so I think that was the first set of things that we did for our customers. I think, in terms of how do you stay engaged, it's an ongoing thing to the point that Mark made. This is not a 1 month, 2 month thing. We're deep 6 months into this, and who knows, we might be here for a pretty long time. And so how do we continue to stay engaged with our customers during the whole process? Our entire management team reached out to about 1,000 customers in the first month. And this was just to share what we were doing for them, but also to make sure that we were, there in case they needed to reach to someone immediately. We then did a whole bunch of programs in terms of education. The business that we are in, we're helping small and medium businesses go online. And so some of them are already there, but then you had this whole, idea of there's nothing offline anymore. There's no more offline marketing. There's no more outside sales. There's certainly no more outside service. And we really needed to help our customers get to online very quickly. So we put together a bunch of academy courses, educating them on the transition, provided them with the benchmarks. And all of this is really one thing that is important during this time. Now, helping is really the new selling. It's not just about selling. It's really helping our customers is the new selling. And so I think a lot of our programs have been, how can we help our customers during this time? And I think that's what we have been focused on, Kevin.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it is, what our CEO, Stuart, says, add value before you extract any value, right? First and foremost. So I love that. Helping is new selling. Another interesting point is you talk about 3 companies, Slack, Box, and HubSpot. And in the pre-COVID days, you would think pricing and packaging decisions those decisions, a lot went into them. They take a long time. They're fairly incremental. But it was interesting to see how rapidly all 3 companies moved on their pricing, on their terms, to make sure that they took care of the customer first. That was inspiring to see, I know, in my own experience, with the way our Slack's finance team kind of turned around and met our customers' needs there. And it's one of those things. This is all 3 of these companies are taking the long view, and we got to help our customers now, and in hopes that they're with us decades to follow. So it's great stuff. Yamini, so these are some positives, and these are some ways of overcoming the challenges. What you mentioned something that, you haven't, not everything's working, or what are the bigger challenges that you're seeing? What are the things that you're still kind of getting your arms around?
I would say that we've kind of gone through a couple of different phases. In March and April, it was about helping our customers get to, having an online presence and moving there. And that was a bit of an adjustment. It was not such a big adjustment internally because we are primarily more of an inside sales organization. So we had all of the setup necessary to transition. I think, what has happened, and I'm sure, Mark, you could talk about this as well. In June and July was like, okay, now we got to do something. We got to do something immediately. We got to start making the changes in order for us to sustain in this new normal or new abnormal, however you want to look at it. And so it accelerated a number of decisions, like Mark said, for a lot of our customers. And so helping them through all of that transition. I think part of that is how do we stay engaged with our customers? How do we make sure that we are selling with empathy? You want to be able to meet customers where they are. Some of them are actually going out of business. If you are in any of the impacted industries, you're going out of business. But then some of them are like, this is the only hope for them to thrive and survive is really going, digital. And so I think for us, it was getting clear playbooks and really helping our sales teams as well as the customer success teams to identify where customers are in their journey with COVID and then be able to, provide that. You don't want to say something at a time like this where people are already sensitive. Yeah. The other part of it is supporting our sales team. And we have all kind of gone through ups and downs, 10 times over this year. Where are they in that process? And how do we provide help, to make sure that it's a marathon that we're running, not a sprint that we're running? So just a bunch of ups and downs, both dealing with customers as well as motivating the sales organization.
Yep. That's definitely been my experience as well. It's coming in waves, so to speak. Yep. And Mark, how about yourself? How do you keep your team aligned on the kind of the top three, so to speak, and keep everybody heading in the same direction?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, to the earlier comments on just communication and transparency, that's a very important part of it to keep everyone kind of locked in on the goal at hand. But in terms of immediate response to the pandemic, all of these digital transformation initiatives that we've been talking about for a couple of years, they came to kind of a screeching halt right as we were hit in the face with the pandemic in favor of responding to it in sort of crisis mode. But organizations around the world, in our experience, responded fairly quickly. And then I think many people thought we'd be back at work in May or in June. And then as you get into the summer months and you realize, oh, well, that's not happening anytime soon. We're now just in this state where we're going to be here for a while. And so what we're seeing now in the market is that IT organizations are really starting to talk about those digital transformation initiatives again, because they've made the remote work investments and everyone's at home and their productivity levels are fairly high. And it appears to me, especially if you're a public company, that the market sort of lets you get away with talking about financial results and the impact from the pandemic kind of one time, maybe for one quarter. But after that, the markets and the investors don't care anymore, and businesses need to get back to work. They need to start investing. They need to refocus on those transformation initiatives. So we're now having more conversations about digital transformation and less about remote work because that's all been sort of addressed. And I think that's where we're seeing most of the customer conversations going these days.
That's right. And, Mark, you talked a little bit about the future of work and companies like Box and Slack and Okta and Zoom facilitating that. Can you talk a little specifically? You still have large, medium, and small customers to go after and opportunities to execute as a team. How is Slack playing a role in all that?
Well, it's a critical role both internally and externally. So if you are in B2B complex sales where you have deals that can have long sales cycles because there's lots of buyers both in the lines of business and in IT, in our case in security, those deals can get a little hairy and they can take some time. And so when that happens, the deals can extend, they can push, and having those individual channels that the deal teams work on is critical rather than having 50 broken email threads that stretch over time and people keep on starting new threads because the old ones get so busy. It's nice just to have one continuous Slack channel on your key deals that you can that you can refer back to. We have deals that, pushed out of our January year end, and those Slack channels are still alive and firing. And you may even switch out members of the account team, and everyone can really keep up to speed. And then in terms of communicating with the customers, one of the things that we do is we open up external Slack channels with our customers who are all bombarded with too many emails. Yeah. And what I find is that when you have that Slack channel opened up, it's like this privileged communication line between us and a customer or a prospect. And you get much higher fidelity communication, much more regular communication, because you're not lost in their overflowing inboxes. So our best sellers always set up those external communication channels with a prospect. And then when they become a customer, it becomes an open channel to discuss customer success issues and how can we make them more successful with their current investment in Box.
This is great. I want to stay on this for a sec. So this is our part of our platform called Slack Connect, and Mark's talking about external shared channels. So you're actually moving from a channel for every account where your account team, the sales engineer, the AE, the CSM, finance, and so forth, are all in this account channel, helping bring the account on board. And once you bring them on board, you actually bring that new customer into your own secure shared channel, correct?
That's correct.
Right. And how do you do that? That represents, to me, it represents the most exciting and differentiated element of Slack's future in building these secure business networks. I think the value is incredible. But there is an element of a change of behavior, right? We're moving maybe from our customers, maybe from email, or better yet, text, right? We always want a text-based relationship with our customers, moving them into Slack. How do you drive that behavior change? How do you pitch that value?
Well, first of all, I think it helps if the customer's on Slack, because then it's not a communication vehicle that they're unfamiliar with. But if they are a Slack customer, then it's like 100% acceptance rates. They're naturally going to gravitate to that communication mode. And I do agree that it's sort of like, 5 and 10 years ago, I used to ask my teams all the time if they had an open text channel with a customer, because I felt at that time that was a good litmus check. If we had good open communication with the customer, and generally you can get, more rapid response, more clear information back and forth from a buyer when you have that text relationship. And it sort of can get through the borders of time in terms of evening communication, early in the morning communication. And we're now finding that maybe those external Slack channels are kind of the same thing, where you can have your account team and the decision team, or once they become a customer, the team that's responsible for managing the relationship with us from a day-to-day standpoint. We can have really high fidelity communication and keep everyone on the same page. So generally speaking, if they're a Slack shop, then they're going to want to do it. And otherwise, it may be a good invitation into the Slack world for them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think it's slightly more professional almost than texting. Hopefully you have that text-based relationship, but it is nice to move it into a more professional environment with the same kind of ease and fluidity that text
Agreed.
Presents. So.
Absolutely.
Yamini, as I mentioned, you have a huge customer base, and you're pulling a lot from that customer base to inform your product decisions, your support decisions. How is Slack playing a role in that?
Look, I will tell you that if any of us had to be a power user of Slack before, we are like super powered Slack users right now. Mm-hmm. And it's, Slack has replaced a lot of things. It has certainly replaced the text-based relationship like Mark was talking about. Mm-hmm. For me, it has like replaced the, dropping in someone's cube and saying hello, dropping in, an evening, cocktail and saying hello. It's replaced a lot of those things because it is, probably one of the more personal things that you can do. So I'll say that internally, this is the way we're running the business, right? We are running the business, from a sales and the entire flywheel. We call the marketing, sales, and customer success organization the flywheel organization. That's the way we run the business. Our QBRs now obviously are all on Zoom, but our entire QBR conversation happens on Slack. So as someone is presenting, this is a way for 40, 50 people to be engaged and share their insights and share their opinion, make decisions, ship decisions. All of those things happen in Slack. And then I think, again, from a customer perspective, this is also, if you are able to exchange and they're also on Slack, then it becomes like a very easy way to exchange information. There are a number of deals, the way you track it, and you kind of like exchange information on what you need towards the last couple of days of the month or the quarter to close. And keep an ongoing dialogue with those customers, all of that happens on Slack. So I think it's a really powerful, combination of having a great video conferencing, a great, communication tool that helps us not just, move from the world that we were living in to the virtual world, but be exceptionally productive in this world.
Right. Yeah, it's been quite an accelerator for this type of platform, and it's interesting. So it's almost like your virtual sales floor. It sounds like you're talking about touching base with, whether it be checking in on accounts or touching base with people, seeing how they're doing. It's almost like this is the new way to walk the floor.
Absolutely. And I do it all the time. I'm like, and sometimes it's okay. It's like, you're like, how are you doing? How are things going? And all the way to, hey, congratulations, you closed that great deal. And it keeps that personal connection going. And It's been incredible in keeping us connected as an organization.
That's great. So for those watching, I think if you're new to Slack as a sales tool, you're getting the sense we're using channels to swarm accounts and pull in resources across the company. And then we're using external shared channels to bring the customer into the conversation. A lot of you are using HubSpot CRM, or you're using Salesforce.com or something of the like. There's an interesting intersection. I worked at Salesforce for 10 years, so and I know Chatter. I use Chatter a lot. I think there's an interest out there of like, where does Salesforce or HubSpot or the system of record end, and where does Slack pick up? I'd love to hear your perspective on that, Mark.
Yeah, so Kevin, we were both there for 10 years, and in my time there, I was a big user, like a power user of Chatter, and gave hundreds and hundreds of demos on how sales leaders can use Chatter. And then when I left, I went to a security company that was heavily invested in Slack. So because Slack was already in that environment, I had to learn how to use it. And what I found, and it's really just about, the UI and the speed and simplicity of Slack, and the mobile app is excellent, that when I was using Chatter, I definitely had to pull people into the channels. And, I might chatter on an opportunity or something like that, and people would get an email alert, and then they were getting too many email alerts. They were turning off the email alerts. It was constantly like a little bit of a pushing rope to get the people into those communication groups where I wanted them to collaborate. And we had a decent amount of success, doing so, as we were kind of drinking our own champagne. But what I find with Slack is I don't have to do any of that kind of pushing and pulling. It is the place where our team communicates and collaborates, not just in sales, but our customer success managers, our marketing team, our product and engineering team, and our people team. The whole company is in Slack. So it really doesn't matter what the topic is, what it is that we're talking about, if it's internally or externally. It's a natural place to go to communicate with people and get really, high fidelity communication, and at a rapid response rate that I really struggled with, even when I was at the company that made the tool.
Interesting. And Yamini, how about yourself? Where does your kind of CRM and customer record intersect with Slack?
Yeah, I think, from a HubSpot perspective, obviously that's the system of record, and our sales team works there. But at the same time, there is a lot of, communication on a deal, on a quarter, on a month, on the forecast. All of that happens on Slack. And so for us, it is, in the virtual world we live in, we just need the combination of both. And the fact that, we ship a lot of decisions. We make, daily decisions on Slack basically tells how deeply it's kind of integrated in the way we work. So they both are, absolutely essential. And it's made the move to the world that we live in a little bit easier, for sure.
Good. Yeah, here at Slack, we're a Salesforce shop, and we're disciplined about it and have a really strong implementation of Salesforce. And the way I kind of see it is Salesforce reflects a lot of the output of the work, where the teams are coming together and they're preparing for calls. They're working on their decks in Google Docs. They're pulling in resources from engineering or from marketing. All that conversation and all the work and all the prep up to the meeting is happening in Slack. Let's say you have the customer prospect meeting, the meeting goes well, and you get to move the deal forward. Well, then that gets reflected in Salesforce. It's almost like the output of the work gets reflected in Salesforce as a system of record, but a lot of the work is happening inside of Slack. And it's an interesting concept. Most CRM companies use the term 360-degree view of the customer. I think what Slack is doing is giving you a 360-degree view of the conversation, meaning here's every facet of our conversation from every kind of key stakeholder across our business as we pull together our communications with this prospect or customer. So we have Slack does have an integration with Salesforce, and I would encourage people to look into that. It is in our Slack for Sales channel here at Frontier. So more on that. But let's broaden it up. Let's broaden it back from just Salesforce and Slack. Yamini, tools in general. Do you have, as sales leaders, there's no shortage of sales tools. Beyond those two, what are you seeing? How do you keep it all in line, so to speak, so that you're optimizing for sales rep productivity?
Yeah, the word integration carries a lot, right now. And almost every marketing organization, sales organization can't be surprised to find 20, 30 different SaaS applications. We've already named a bunch today, with Slack and Zoom and either HubSpot, and then a whole bunch of tools for marketing and sales. And so we got to spend a lot of time thinking about the workflow of the salesperson. Mm-hmm. And I know that there are a lot of different metrics that we look at from a salesperson's productivity, which is their inputs and the outputs, and the number of calls you make, the number of deals. One of the very key metrics that I care about is customer facing time, CFT. Okay. Which is, what are we doing to improve that customer facing time, CFT, of the rep? Because, if you can maximize that customer facing time and you can prioritize the set of activities during that customer facing time, then every minute should yield incrementally more in terms of the output. So really paying attention to that customer facing time. So from a tools perspective, obviously HubSpot is the CRM, but we care a lot about what is the workflow of a rep. Where do they need to do? Is it conversation in Gong? Is it, content in a particular, area? Maybe it is in Box or Google Docs. And what are the pieces of information they need in order to make that time productive? So we focus on integration, and we focus on really automation to be able to drive the most productive output in the time that they have in front of customers. Yep.
Interesting. So integration, making sure it's almost like a holistic workflow across the sales rep's day or month or quarter.
Exactly. Yep.
How about you, Mark? I'm guessing there's probably quite a few sales tools at Box as well.
Yeah, we've bought just about one of everything over the years. If you look back to the early days at Salesforce, you were there before I was. When we got pushback on the price, we would basically ask customers if they let their reps expense their cell phones, and if so, for how much? Because the answer was almost always around $100 a month. And then we would sort of align the price of Salesforce to the price of a cell phone. Salesforce license discount maybe was $1,200 a month, and we'd say, it's no big deal. It's about the same price as you're expensing for cell phones now. And if you look forward, 15, 20 years later, the sales stack that many enterprises have is so massive now that $1,500 investment is nothing when you add up LinkedIn Navigator and DocuSign and all of the Hoovers and data tools that people have. A lot of enterprises are spending up to $10,000 per rep on all their tools, and that's before you get into engagement, enablement platforms and everything else. So we're very keen on using tools to help us be more efficient, because we know that's where the market is going, and that modern sellers have to be tool enabled, but you can go a little bit overboard. I'm really focused these days on tools that help our reps be more successful. I think in a kind of first generation or first wave of a lot of the technology in and around CRM systems was really around visibility for management. And today's tools really have to be at enabling and helping reps get more successful, because in this SaaS boom over the last 20 years, everyone has been focused on hire, never stop hiring. You need more distribution capacity. Mm-hmm. But what we're all realizing now is that if you don't have really high productivity levels, then you're going to have a leaky bucket with reps leaving your company at a rapid rate. So it's really important that you enable your reps very, very quickly and get them to a level of productivity quickly. They have high participation rates across the team, and that's critical. And there's tools that can help, from enablement tools to tools like Gong that were just mentioned, activity oriented management tools like People AI. and then outbound prospecting tools like a sales loft or an outreach to help reps really develop more pipeline. So all kinds of innovation out there, which is pretty amazing over the last 20 years. But I'm very focused on tools that help our reps be more successful.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think we a lot of those names Slack is a customer of, and I think it's imperative for us as leaders to say, okay, what we choose, we have to back. Like, this is not a place for too much sprawl, because you will have folks just kind of looking over their shoulder saying, should I be using this or that? And it just causes confusion, and it takes away from that customer facing time. It takes away from ease of prioritization. And it's just been, it's been interesting, to really hone in on, okay, what did we select and what are we backing and what are we going with? And then just, having to force some other conversations around sales tooling to a later date. But it's a fascinating space. Another one, Mark, I'd love to just touch on, and because as I want to kind of spawn some questions for Q&A, is to just let people know, we talked about Slack Connect as a way for Box to connect directly with our customers. I do want to let folks know that we're also, we're partners, Slack and Box and Slack and HubSpot, and we've created shared channels between our sales teams and our account executives. Let's say they, have a new lead at Coca-Cola. Our account executives can go into a shared workspace or shared channel and connect with each other. So you have an AE at Slack reaching out saying, can I be connected with the account executive at Coca-Cola? And the two can meet in that channel and share, share notes, strategize, and what have you. So it's not just Box to customer, but it's also Box to partner. Can you touch on that a little bit, Mark?
Yeah, it's a really important initiative that we have between our companies, where our reps, we're all trying to sell to the same organizations around the world, and organizations that sort of from a cultural standpoint are likely to buy a Slack and an Okta and a Zoom are also very likely to buy Box. So we definitely want to team together, and that's really one of the big bases of the partnerships. And in the old world, those would just be dead end communication channels on email, and I would email someone at Slack and say, hey, could you tell me who the rep is on XYZ account? And maybe I'd hear back, maybe I wouldn't. But now our global account teams around the world are communicating and collaborating. Of course, they're staying true to confidentiality agreements with our customers, but they're teaming together to help each other and help our customers in a combined fashion be more successful.
Yeah, that's great. So we'd be happy to take some questions on that as well. Yamini, Mark just talked a little bit about email being a dead end. How are you finding the transition from email to Slack?
Oh, I love it. I personally love it. The whole company loves it. I think, I used to be kind of really maniacal about managing a zero inbox and email.
I remember
now,
well.
I kind of don't care, I kind of don't care about that as much. It is much more about the just-in-time communication from a Slack perspective. And it's, like I said, it's really changed our QBRs. It's really changed, decision-making. We, as most of us, have probably done this year, we moved a number of management offsites to management virtual sites, right? Mm-hmm. And we thought, wow, this is going to be different because we're not going to feel like we're all in this together. And we had some very large ones. I had like our entire Flywheel staff, all of the leaders within that, about 90 people. We participated a lot more on Slack. All of the feedback was on Slack, and we were just able to get to consensus on Slack. And so I think that has definitely changed. And, I don't care as much about email, which is fantastic as well.
Very good. Music to our ears.
It's good.
Well, we're just about time. And before we go to Q&A, and I want to again thank Yamini and Mark for their insights. It's been a pleasure to be speaking with you guys today. I think as I'm listening to the two of them, I'm thinking about a few things. One is we got to take care of our employees first. These are difficult times. There's a spectrum of needs that our employees are facing. And it really comes down to employees first. And then secondly, when it comes to customers, when we look at our markets, how do we connect with our customers and stay close to them in new ways, whether it be through shared channels or, as Yamini said, the executive call down list. And then lastly, as we're helping each other be more efficient. How is Slack helping us do that, both within internally and externally with our customers? And then where does Slack fit into the overall tooling so that, again, we keep it really crisp for our account executives and we optimize, as Yamini called it, CFT, customer facing time. That's what it's all about. So I want to thank you again. I encourage folks that have participated to go to the Slack for Sales channel in the Frontier portal. We have a lot more content for sales leaders there. And thank you for your time. We will see you on the Q&A.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.